It wouldn't be National Signing Day in Miami without some late suspense and drama. And the Hurricanes have just landed a big time linebacker in the class of 2025. From the 813 to the 305. Kellen Wiley, welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on America's #1 sportsbook because new customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this loaded National Signing Day episode, and this is not going to be our last episode of the day, by the way. We'll talk about what's coming up later on today, but we will talk about, Miami's playoff snub and the way people like ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips and Miami Athletic Director Dan Radakovich are reacting to that because the committee, they essentially sealed Miami's fate last night. And, Alabama, they value that 9-3 Alabama resume over Miami's 10-2. We'll talk about how the committee manipulated that resume in the first place. We'll talk about Miami's class of 2025, who is in so far. The vast majority of the letters of intent, they don't do letters of intent anymore. The paperwork, the new paperwork, the financial aid agreements, all that stuff has been signed by the majority of Miami's verbal commits. There is one of them who at the time I'm speaking to you has not officially signed yet. So we'll talk about whether there's a little bit of drama or not there. But how about this? A great way to kick off your late morning, early afternoon today. Miami Hurricanes have landed Kellen Wiley, 4-star linebacker out of Armwood High School in Seffner, Florida. Armwood is familiar. Armwood has been good to us in this cycle because Miami has also landed Gerard Pringle, who's been verbally committed to Miami for quite some time. I've got to think that Pringle has a lot to do with Wiley deciding Miami was the place for him. And this is a big get, folks. I know that for a while, leading into September, October, we were feeling really good about Miami's chances with Kellen Wiley. But then over the last couple of weeks, the Texas Longhorns especially had gained a ton of momentum. And I had really in recent days been thinking he was going to be putting the horns up, not the U up today. And Florida, they've been on a spree lately, flipping guys left and right ever since they decided, to use the Billy Napier buyout money on recruiting instead of firing their coach. Florida has been on an absolute tear. But Kellen Wiley ends up choosing Miami over the likes of Texas and over the likes of Florida. I really, really love this player, guys. And Wiley was a bit of, I don't know if you could call him a late bloomer, because I think that would probably be unfair to him. But for whatever reason, he wasn't getting the scouting and the respect until his senior year of high school started. That's when Wiley really started to get noticed and, quickly shot up from a 3-star to a 4-star, was shooting up everybody's recruiting boards. And this guy he's got the measurables and the physicality. And I also think the mindset to become one of the next great linebackers at the University of Miami. 6'4", 225 pounds, great box defender who hits like a Mack truck. And I'm really, really excited about this move to get Kellen Wiley here. And it was really something that Miami has needed, because of course, within the last couple of days, the Hurricanes lost linebacker Gavin Nix from IMG Academy. They lost him in a flip to Oregon, going back, months. Miami lost another linebacker from their class in a flip to Auburn. So landing Kellen Wiley to me was really a must get for Miami. I know that Miami has also been trying to flip TJ Alford, another top linebacker from Ohio State. We'll see what happens later today there, because I know we've been getting some good, some bad vibes recently on that one. But landing Kellen Wiley is just absolutely massive. So let's take a look at what Miami has outside of Wiley so far, who's the latest addition. I think we've now got at least 20 who signed a national letter of intent and one who has not yet. So we'll go in order of their rankings on 24/7 Sports. S.J. Alofai Thule, who's out in Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman, interior offensive lineman. I am a huge fan, and this guy is going to be the next great Wall of Mirabal product. He could end up being Miami's center of the future, could end up playing guard at a high level. He officially sent in his paperwork. I know some people were like, wait, why hadn't he sent it in yet? Since he's out on the West Coast, he couldn't send it until 7 a.m. Pacific time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern time, which was why you had to wait a little bit longer for the SJ paperwork than for some of the other players. Miami has locked in and signed Joshua Moore, 4-star receiver out of West Broward. Miami flipped him from Florida earlier this season. That was a very important get. 6'4", 205 pounds. I mentioned Gerard Pringle, top running back, 4-star from Armwood. He's in. Bryce Fitzgerald, safety from Columbus High School, that is, 6'1.5", 172 pounds. Fitzgerald is locked in. We know Miami need defensive backs in a big way. Got to revamp that position group for the future. Miami has also locked in Hayden Lowe. This was another one who had to wait until 10 a.m. Eastern time, 7 a.m. Pacific to send in his paperwork. The 4-star edge rusher out of California. Big get. Miami, remember, flipped him from USC a few weeks ago. Lowe is in. Jason Taylor is hopefully going to work wonders with Hayden Lowe. He's 6'4", 242 pounds, an absolute beast off the edge. Another defensive back Miami really needed, Jabari Antoine, 6'1", 170, 4-star out of Westgate High School, great high school program in Louisiana. Another defensive back, Chris Ewald out of Chaminade, Madonna. Miami has locked him in, 6 foot, 165, going to be an important corner for Miami moving forward. Probably one of the most underrated members of this class, Herbert Scroggins, edge rusher out of Benedictine Military School in Savannah, Georgia. He is locked in. I think Scroggins is going to wreak some havoc. His high school tape this year has been fantastic. Miami's got their tight ends locked in. Brock Schott, 6'3", 220 out of Leo, Indiana. Luca Gilbert, 6'7", 233 out of Westchester, Ohio. He's locked in as well. They're both 4-stars. Luke Nicholl, 4-star quarterback out of Milton, who he might end up, outside of the defensive backs who Miami needs so badly, Luke Nicholl could end up being the single most important member of this class, because I think Miami's got themselves a quarterback of the future here who's been absolutely tearing it up and really overachieving at the high school level. I say overachieving because I feel like based on the way his recruiting rankings have been, especially by 24/7, who whatever reason, it's almost like they have an agenda against the guy. They rate him so low. The other services rate him a lot higher. Nicholl has elite accuracy. He moves really, really well in the pocket. He's very disciplined. He's won championships at every level he's played in so far. State champion in Georgia's largest classification as a starting quarterback. He wins every 7-on-7 tournament he plays in. He's coached by Cam Newton in 7-on-7. Luke Nicholl is an absolute winner. And oh, by the way, Luke is scheduled to join us later today. And I appreciate Luke he's going to make time. We'll probably have him on in the afternoon today, making time from his busy schedule because he's preparing for state playoffs in addition to all the signing day festivities that's happening. He's got a signing day ceremony in Milton, Georgia, his high school coming up later this afternoon, I should say. And he's going to join us after that. So I appreciate Luke, and stay tuned later today on Locked On Canes. We are going to have Luke Nicholl on, who's an incredibly important member of this class. Miami signs interior offensive lineman Max Buchanan, cornerback Amari Wallace out of Miami Central, Dalen Upshaw. Others were trying to flip Upshaw, including Auburn. He ends up signing with Miami out of Phoenix City, Alabama. Great player. Linebacker Ezekiel Marcelin, another good linebacker out of Miami Central. Miami signs Chaminade Madonna defensive lineman Dante Simpson, edge rusher Micah Newton from Newberry, Florida. Offensive tackle Demetrius Campbell, offensive tackle Jaden Wilkerson have all signed. Now, somebody notable who, again, at the time when I'm speaking to you guys, hasn't signed his paperwork yet, and a lot of folks are wondering what the heck is going on there, is Malachi Tony, 4-star American Heritage wide receiver. I'll tell you guys what I know about the Malachi Tony situation when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. I'm thrilled to welcome Better Together back to the Locked On Podcast Network. If you're like me, you probably hate the team that you drafted in season-long fantasy, but you want to stay in the action, right? Introducing Better Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork trumps talent, I should say, and you can play with your friends, not against your friends. You pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the social daily fantasy movement at Better Together. I love the sense of camaraderie. It enhances that experience of watching sports. And guys, Better Together has made me realize that, yeah, daily fantasy is fun alone, but like a lot of other things, it's better with friends. Guys, download Better Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code Locked On for a free $10 entry into any NCAA football or NFL contest. Play with me on Locked On CFB Saturday Games contest this Saturday. Remember the code Locked On, all one word, because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. Thank you so much for making this National Signing Day episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When things like this happen on National Signing Day, I try not to jump to conclusions, right? Because, but a lot of times we're conditioned as fans to think if a player, doesn't or hasn't signed his national letter of intent, and again, I keep saying that it's no longer called the national letter of intent. They have other papers you sign. But when guys haven't turned in their paperwork at the time we were expecting them to, we oftentimes jump to the worst possible conclusions, right? I mean, we remember what happened with Cormani McLean a couple of years ago. We remember what happened with Alex Collins years back, right? So there have been a lot of reactions to the fact that at the time that I'm talking with you, hopefully later on, if some of you watch this episode, this is all put behind us and there's a positive resolution. But it's our understanding that American Heritage 4-star wide receiver Malachi Tony hasn't signed his paperwork yet. Kane Sport, I think it was Matt Shodell from Kane Sport, reached out to him for comment, and he said, I'm not signing today, and kind of didn't really answer the question if there's any other schools in the mix. Like he didn't really give Shodell like any sort of info outside of the fact that he's not signing today. So I've been trying to gather information and ask around, and people who are close to the situation are of the feeling that this is going to get sorted out and that he's going to end up signing, that things should be okay here with Tony. So folks, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I know, Hurricanes fans get a little nervous for a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, Malachi Tony is a player that you absolutely want. This is a game changer, and also he's so versatile. Like he had to plug and play at quarterback for American Heritage last week and had an awesome game and an awesome victory. And of course, he's a standout wide receiver. Like, is this guy, like you talk about that versatility, is he another Anquan Bolden or something? We had a conversation on this show on Sunday about Malachi Tony with Larry Bluestein, and Blue, he described Tony, and who, by the way, has reclassified. He's graduating high school a year and a half early. Blue still says this is a guy who's ready to be an impact guy even year one, that he could already be ready to contribute as a true freshman, despite being a year younger than most any other of the freshmen that are going to be in Miami's class. So this is a great player. You want to make sure Miami gets this one over the finish line. And I know, listen, we see it around the country, right? You think a player's going to sign somewhere and they don't. We've been hit by the last minute drama in those situations before. In the case of Malachi Tony, it's been a complicated recruiting process for him because he was initially committed to Miami as a class of 2026 guy, reclassified to 2025. Then he decommitted from Miami to reopen his recruitment, recommitted to Miami as a class of 2025 guy. And now we're still waiting for the paperwork to be signed. But all that I can tell you is I'm of the understanding that it's probably not as negative of a situation as a lot of you and a lot of us had been assuming it might be. And I don't want to say it's just you guys, because this stuff concerns me as well. But I am of the thinking that this situation could very well work its way out. So fingers crossed, because Malachi Tony is absolutely a player that we want to secure in this class of 2025 recruiting. So, again, we're wondering if there could be another flip to be had today. Kellen Wiley wasn't a flip, but it almost felt like it because he was uncommitted so long. We thought he was going to go to Texas. He'd gotten crystal balls to Texas. So we're so happy Miami has added Kellen Wiley to their class of 2025. We're waiting on if there's any good news to be had on guys like TJ Alford, another linebacker, or Jarquez Carter, a defensive lineman. They're both committed to Ohio State. Miami's been trying to flip them. Is there any prayer of a chance on DJ Pickett? So DJ, of course, who's been committed to LSU for several months, chose LSU over Oregon and Miami. Folks have been putting on a full court press since before the season even started to try to flip DJ, Miami included. And DJ Pickett has those family ties to the U. His cousin, Booker Jr., his uncle, Booker Sr., played here. His cousin plays here right now. He's come down and visited a number of Miami games. The sense that you get out there from the experts like Steve Wiltfong is that LSU is favored to keep DJ Pickett in their class, and there's not going to be a last-minute move. But obviously, we know Miami's been trying. Oregon has been trying for a flip, and Florida. Florida has been very active, we've all seen over the past couple of weeks. They've been trying to get that flip happening for DJ Pickett. So the conventional wisdom seems to think he's going to stick with LSU. Florida put on a full court press to flip 5-star wide receiver Dallas Wilson from Oregon. Miami tried for him as well. But we weren't feeling so good because he never actually made it down for a visit this season. Right up until the moment he clarified his situation, everyone thought Wilson was about to flip to Florida. That seemed imminent. People were already posting about it, reacting to it. And then ultimately Dallas Wilson decided to stick with the Oregon Ducks. So that's kind of where we're at today. Every hard commit, every verbal commit for the class of 2025, with the exception of Malachi Tony, have signed their paperwork so far today. Kellen Wiley, I guess, has not signed his paperwork yet. I don't think that's officially in, but he just committed to Miami earlier on within the last couple of hours. So again, Miami has in this class for 2025 already signed offensive tackles Jaden Wilkerson and Demetrius Campbell, edge rusher Micah Newton, defensive lineman Dante Simpson, linebacker Ezekiel Marcelin, wide receiver Dalen Upshaw, cornerback Amari Wallace, interior offensive lineman Max Buchanan. That's another super underrated member of the class who I really like. Tight ends Luka Gilbert and Brock Schott, quarterback Luke Nicholl, who we're going to talk to later today, edge rusher Herbert Scroggins, cornerbacks Chris Ewald and Jabori Antoine, edge rusher Hayden Lowe, safety Bryce Fitzgerald, running back Gerard Pringle, wide receiver Joshua Moore, interior offensive lineman S.J. Alofai Thule. Meanwhile, we're still licking our wounds from that college football playoff committee verdict last night. Let's talk about what ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips is saying, because Jim, I need you to fight, Jim. You didn't fight enough for the Florida State snub last year. I need you to fight really, really hard. And it's not just Miami who needs him to fight. SMU might get screwed. We'll explain what could happen there when we come back. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. We're not done with FanDuel because, guys, this is America's #1 sports book. We have so much football left this season. Conference championship games, even though we're not going to be a part of it. College football playoffs, same thing. Bowl games. There's so much to go. All the NFL action we still have. Get ready to tackle all of it with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with that $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure for your next listen, you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I take you all around the Atlantic Coast Conference, big games, big storylines like this college football playoff snub, all of that. And like this show, it's available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Make sure you check out Locked On ACC as well. All right, so we get this. Miami's athletic director, Dan Radakovich, put out a reaction on his X account last night after Miami. And again, we did a whole episode about it here on Locked On Canes. So if you haven't checked it out, go through our episodes. Last night, we talked about the college football playoff snub, where, Miami needed to be ranked 11th or higher. 12th is not good enough because the Big 12 champion is going to jump in front of you. So Miami being ranked 12th behind a 3-loss Alabama at number 11. Miami's goose is cooked. And even the chairman of the committee, Ward Manuel, even said, he doesn't see any way Miami's going to jump into a spot. Dan Radakovich, Miami's AD, posted this. Really? With 2 question marks. What put Bama over the top of Miami for the last spot is that Miami went 1-2 in their last 3 games. And he writes, by an average of 4.5 points to a ranked Syracuse and a Georgia Tech team that just took UGA to 8 overtimes. While Bama, he writes, went 2-1 over the last 3, beating a 5-7 Auburn, destroyed by a bad Oklahoma team. I put in the word bad. He didn't. I added that. And they beat FCS Mercer, he said. So that's how they got it. And then also the explanation from Ward Manuel about, Bama's resume when he talked about the wins that, Bama's got more wins against ranked teams than Miami does. Well, Eric McLean from ACC Network made a great point. The playoff committee, they're the ones who decide who's ranked. So that's their own manipulation. And, so they're going to boast Alabama beating a bad Missouri team, or not great, I shouldn't say bad, but a Missouri team that I don't believe deserves to be ranked and got blown out by 30 plus multiple times. That team gets ranked. Louisville doesn't. Duke, who's 9-3, Duke should absolutely be ranked. You can't help but feel like the playoff committee kept Duke off the rankings when they should be in there just to further their argument of Miami not deserving to get in. That's where the manipulation comes into play. You know what they can't manipulate? Bowl-eligible teams. Miami has a better record on the road against bowl-eligible teams than Alabama does. Hurricanes went 4-2 on the road against teams with bowl eligibility. That is something that they cannot manipulate. Now, people would argue, well, the bowl-eligible teams that Miami beat, they don't play SEC schedules, but that, again, comes to that perception and those hypotheticals of which one is the stronger conference. Instead of letting hypotheticals and politicking describe who gets in, we should be allowing actual on-field results to describe who gets in. And folks, I know what some of you are thinking, and I get it. We talked about this last night. You're going to come back with me at Donno. Do we really deserve to be in? Because Miami had their opportunity. They controlled their own destiny. All they had to do was not blow a 21-0 lead against Syracuse, and then we'd be in, and we deserve it. We do not deserve it right now, I've seen a lot of you say. But here's the thing. Whether we deserve it or not, it still matters, the subjectivity of this process. Because, yeah, I can easily say Miami, who blew a 21-point lead against Syracuse, all they had to do was win that game, and they're in. We deserve our fate. But here's the thing. Why don't Alabama fans, why don't they have to say, you know what? We got embarrassed by a bad Oklahoma, 24-3. We don't deserve it. How come they don't have to say that? Again, this whole deserving thing, I know we all feel down. I know the Syracuse game was an absolute kick to the groin, and I'm still not over it. I'm still not over it, and I'm not excusing what happened on the field. I'm not excusing the coaching. I'm not excusing the execution. And I get it. If Miami had taken care of their business, we'd be in the college football playoff. But if you say we don't deserve it, can you say Alabama does? Can you say they do? Because the bottom line is, when you're in a 12-team CFP, yeah, there's going to be some teams who get in whose fan bases may not feel like we deserve to be in. But the problem with that is if Miami doesn't deserve it because we lost by a combined 9 points to, a much better than advertised Georgia Tech team on the road. We saw what they did to Georgia, what they almost did to Georgia, and a good Syracuse team. If we don't deserve it because of that, are you telling me Alabama does deserve it when they lost to freaking Vanderbilt and they lost 24-3 to an Oklahoma that was 5 wins at the time? And the only reason why Oklahoma's bowl eligible is because they beat Alabama. They shouldn't be in a bowl game right now. So you're telling me we don't deserve it, but they do. That's the problem. That's the issue. Here's what ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips said. Let me pull up his quote because the commish did react. And by the way, going back to what happened last year to Florida State, I didn't celebrate that. I know a lot of Miami fans were like, "Ha, you guys! Oh, this is so hilarious. Florida State got left out." I've got no love for FSU. You guys know that. But my thinking was, if they could get screwed, you can say what you want to about what would have happened to them if they were in the playoff. They probably would have gotten steamrolled, but it doesn't change the fact that they deserved to be in last year. So if they could get screwed, we could get screwed. Anyone can get screwed by this process. All right, so ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips put out this statement. He says, "We are certainly pleased that SMU moved up in the rankings and that the committee continued to recognize the Mustangs' incredible season, which should unequivocally, that word's tough for me, earn them a playoff spot, regardless of this weekend's outcome. With that said, we are also incredibly shocked and disappointed that Miami dropped 6 spots to number 12. By the way, Miami dropped farther after losing to a 9-win Syracuse team than Ohio State dropped after losing at home to a 5-win Michigan team. That doesn't make sense." He says, quote, the commissioner, "Miami has more wins and fewer losses than the team directly ahead of them, and a dominant victory over an SEC team whose late season surge includes a win over number 13 Ole Miss. Moreover, with 2 losses by a combined 9 points to a ranked Syracuse and a Georgia Tech team that just took number 5 Georgia to 8 overtimes, Miami absolutely deserves better from the committee." He says, "As we look ahead to the final rankings, we hope the committee will reconsider and put a deserving Miami on the field." Good luck with that, commish. That's not happening. I'm glad he's petitioning for it. "We will continue to look forward to this weekend when Clemson and SMU have an opportunity to earn an ACC championship and represent the conference in the CFP." All right, so the other part about it, again, Miami got snubbed. SMU might get screwed because the CFP committee chair, he admitted that it is possible that an SMU loss to Clemson this weekend in the conference championship game, he admitted that could drop them below a 3-loss Alabama team who doesn't even play this weekend. Can you imagine that? There's folks out there, this is not going to happen because that's just not the way sports works, but there are folks out there actually calling for SMU to boycott the ACC championship game because they have more to lose than they have to gain by playing in it. That if they play in that ACC championship game and they lose to Clemson, the committee chair, I love how the committee chair made it very clear that there's no chance for Miami to move into the field, but he did admit there's a chance that SMU could drop out of the field completely, which to me it's absolutely appalling. It's absolutely appalling. Like I don't know if we need to bring computers back into this, AI. We had the BCS like 20 years ago, but I think the AI technology is way better now than it was back then. Do we let Gemini or Alexa, do we let her decide the next 12-team college football playoff? Because this is ridiculous. All right, folks, we're going to be back for at least one more episode later today because we're gonna be chatting with Luke Nicholl, new Miami Hurricanes quarterback. He is signed. He is in. Luke is finally a Cane. And we're also going to talk with former Miami offensive lineman Casey McDermott, who's going to join us later today. So you guys want to keep it right here. We'll talk to you later on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.